All right, folks, it's a tough subject. We call it that because, well, it's a tough subject. On the line now, Dennis Gillan with Jessica Seel. Between us, we lost 3 folks, great folks, to suicide. There's a complicated grief that comes with that. But Jessica, we were talking pre-show, grief in general. It doesn't have to be a death by suicide to throw you into a funk.
No.
There have been some weird news out there lately about young people dying that I think when we talked earlier, you brought you into a little bit of funk, and we don't even know these people.
I know. I think that when we have a loss like we did, it makes us have this raw emotion no matter how much time goes by, which I think is not totally unhealthy. I think somebody told me the other day, you wear your emotions on your sleeve, and I don't think that's an insult. I just who I am, you know.
If you're a guy dealing with a woman, or vice versa, a woman dealing with a guy, or a human dealing with a human, let's keep it real general, is I like emotions on the sleeve. I know where they stand.
That's right. Yeah, I was just watching these 2 young people, and thinking about, my dad was 42, which is young, folks, even young people listening. That is, when you get to that age, when I turned 42, I was like, I thought my dad was old. I mean, like, this is like the prime of my life. And your brothers were super young too, right?
20s, 21, 23.
I mean, you don't realize till you get there how young that actually is, and just so much life and things left to do. And I'm 51. I still feel young, right? Sometimes my body doesn't.
That's old. I'm 61. Come on now.
That's right.
No, it's old. Anything older than 61 is old. But we were talking about young. You watch the news, and last night I played tennis. This is my mental health. And you asked me when we got on the pre-show, have you seen the news? And I was like, no. I tend to read the news. I don't like it told to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can interpret it better, but I was aware of one of the things you talked about. A young guy got at a track meet. Ugh.
Oh, God. I watch the news in the morning. I'm not sure if that's healthy or not, but and that's new for me. I just started doing that. I don't know why, because I didn't watch the news for a long time, but I watched the news, and yes, a young man died in a terrible way in Texas, and died in his twin brother's arms. And then, God, and you know what I thought about? And maybe you think about this too, because, we're kind of weirdos, I guess, but I was worried about his twin brother. Immediately, what is he gonna, you literally have spent your entire life right with someone.
A dear friend of mine and a supporter of halfasorrow.org, and I don't have permission to say his name, but I do steer people his way. He's a twin, and he lost his twin brother to suicide.
Oh.
And every now and then I'll learn of a twin that died by suicide, and I'll call him up or just say, hey, can I send this person your way? Because that's got, like, it's complicated, and then it's like super complicated. Like
I mean, I can't fathom. I don't have a twin. I have a sister who looks like me. She's 3 years younger than me, and it would be horrible. But twins, they say I have twin grandchildren. I have a little boy and a little girl who are twins, and I love watching them interact with each other. They're like they're like connected in just this very way, and just lost. Gosh.
Yeah, they say they have their own language sometimes. The twins. They can read each other's minds and all that stuff. I'm sure the first 8-9 months of their gestation period, they were together, and then together ever since. Twins don't run in our family at the Gillan household. I think it's because we can only make love one time a night. That's an old joke. Oh my God, you almost spit out your coffee. Stop it. It's a family show.
I'm going to go ahead and apologize, folks.
It's a family show. No, so I do steer people that way. That's a bummer. And then you brought up another one I didn't know about. What are you doing watching the news in the morning?
It's I don't know. I do weird things, okay? I just
My
do weird
wife
things.
does that. She'll lay in bed, and we have that little Google thing, Google Home.
Yeah.
The thing that spies on you, and she'll say, hey, Google, play the news. Yeah, it's totally listening to us. And it'll start playing the news. And I heard it this morning. It's all this stuff.
Because it's the same with social media, though. Like, it can really get you. I don't know. Today, I listened to it, and I'm not going to name stations, but there's someone on one of the news stations that I knew, one of the big stations that I actually went to college with her sister and spent time at her house when I was growing up, and she's on one of the big news shows, and I like her, so I think that's why. But she was a graduate of the University of South Carolina, and that's where I went to school. And that's where this young man died, and this other death right here down the road from my house.
Oh, hit by a car. It was a car, for those listening. And it's any death. Let's talk about it. We tend to focus on suicide because of our losses, but any premature death, any death in even expected.
Yeah.
At the end, they say, I was talking to this doctor one time, and we were talking about, he read some study that, if someone has a prolonged illness and they die, or they die suddenly, they were trying to figure out what's the difference, and they said there's not much of a difference. One, you have a little prep time to mentally get around it.
But is that good?
But at the end,
I mean,
the end
really?
is the end.
I don't prep time or not. You still, it's, yeah, I agree. I've heard that too. And, especially when you're a young person and it's like your first brush with death, maybe it is, I don't know. I remember my first brush with death. I was other than like older, honestly, when you're a little kid and your old uncle who you didn't really know passes away, you're like, okay, you kind of think that's normal, I guess. But when I was in high school in 9th grade, a friend that I grew up with's brother was shot in the head and died. And I went to the funeral, and it was so terrible for me. I mean, I was 15 years old, 14 maybe. I don't know. I shouldn't have said that probably, but.
Yeah, well, it's a murder, and it was awful, and it's tragic, and it
was just like real, like people died, like it hits you as like a young person, like how they say when you're young. And I remember this, I had a death and dying class in school for social work. Very strange. Don't ask me why I took it. I did. But it told you these stages of life, like how you view death. And like when you're young, you don't view it as real because you think you're going to live forever. And I would agree with that because I was young one time, so were you. But when you get older, like us, you start to realize it's like an acceptance somewhat, but not as much as when you get older. At least that's what science says. So I think when you're young and you experience death, it's so shocking, And
it's funny you say that, because up until when Matthew died, my younger brother died, Matthew, I was 31. Up until that time, I didn't think about death because I was surrounded by loved ones. I was bulletproof.
Right.
And going to Matt's funeral and coming back, I remember coming back and driving home 4 hours, like, you're the last Gillan boy left. There's 2 girls, there's 5 of us, but I'm it. And I felt extremely vulnerable. Like, I started driving more carefully. What am I eating? I stopped drinking, all this stuff, because I felt vulnerable for the first time in my life. And on the way out of my office every day, and I could see it, a good friend of mine, Daniel Stearns, he died prematurely, brain cancer. Mass card is on my door. So when I leave every day, I'm reminded that life is short. It's super short. And I look at a picture of my good friend Dan, and I'm looking at it right now. It's sad as can be, but we have to live. But I'm coming back to you waking up to the news. I'm no better. I get on Reddit and I start reading the news. I don't know if I read it, is it softer, or if I hear it, is it? What'd you watch? Did you watch it on TV?
I did, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's the reason this was hard was because specifically the one here where I live is because this person, like I said, that was reporting it, was a University of South Carolina graduate. She even said, it was right there at Blossom Street, which is a street. If you live in Columbia, Blossom Street.
Right, so it's a very familiar surroundings for you.
So it was real. Like, this is like everybody that's watching this worldwide is seeing our community, and it just made me sad because I saw the sign for the university. They're putting flowers out for this young man. He was in a fraternity, and he was apparently like a wonderful person, a good friend. He was on his motorcycle, and it was a hit and run, which made it worse.
And they caught the guy, right? They caught the perpetrator.
They did.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of complex issues. But then also the one, I think I told you, the one in Texas was really horrible, and especially watching it because the family the day after had the strength. And man, you could just, looking at him, it just ripped my heart out. Had the strength to get on camera and talk about it. The twin brother and his mother.
How do they do?
I don't know.
I don't know how people can do that.
We're all different.
I've seen press conferences with people like the next day, and they issue a statement. I couldn't even think about facing anybody.
No.
In that crisis mode.
No, I remember after my dad died, the next day I can still see it, and we're sitting in my living room, and my mom was like a zombie, and people were there, and I was thinking there's no way that we could have gotten on camera and talked about it. So it's okay if you can't. It takes time.
Which is very interesting, because interesting point you make, because I was on a board of a local chapter for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention back in the day. Great organization, and I was on the board, and we wouldn't take a volunteer until 1 year after the event. Like, sometimes a tragedy will occur, and they'll go, you know what? I'm starting a foundation tomorrow. And I always applaud those people. I can't believe they're doing this.
We know somebody like that.
I know. And they go, I'm going for it. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I think AFSP, we had that policy about a year. So I got a call. But by the way, somebody heard our podcast in far, far away land and got a hold of me. And they lost a child to suicide. And they want to help out. Well, there you go. You got your little AFSP shirt on. There you go.
Be the voice.
Be the voice. If for those listening, Jessica just showed off that she's wearing a T-shirt from that organization, AFSP. And she rudely interrupted my story. And I have ADHD.
I'm so rude. No, you were talking about the person we were
who heard the podcast.
Yes.
You know, we have a couple stories like this that heard the podcast and I need to get a hold of this guy. And the first question I had for him, he suffered a loss due to suicide of a child, and that's raw. And I always think about my mom and dad right off the bat when someone says that.
I know.
So the first question I had for him was, when did this occur? Because I don't want you to come out, we buried him last week. I'm like, whoa. My recommendation would be, find me in about a year. Right now, you need to find a therapist. You need to regroup. Because that's one thing we didn't do as a family. I'm telling you what, I'm going back. I'm getting all fired up now, Jessica. And my mom mentioned this one time to me. She goes, we should have went to therapy after Mark died. All of us.
All right, Dennis, I'm going to tell you something. I went to therapy right after. It was the wrong therapist.
Okay.
And I tell people this. It is like a relationship. Don't just go to one, it doesn't work, and throw it out the window. This was the wrong therapist, and I can't 100% say that it was good or bad. I don't know that it was anything. This was years, my dad died in 1992. Things are different now, but I can tell you right now, finding the right therapist is as important as finding the right mate. And I did, and I've been with her for 10 years, and she's changed my life. So shop around if you can, Well,
we didn't even shop. We didn't even go.
Well, because were you of a family that, yours was a long time ago too, things were different then, that just didn't really want to acknowledge what had happened and maybe pretend like it was a different type of death?
Oh, yeah, this is 1983 with Mark, 83, so let's go back in your time.
That's right.
So, what's that, 42 years? Jeez. Didn't talk about it.
No.
Didn't talk about it. It was taboo. We didn't even put on the obituary. We listed a charity that was not related to mental health. I think it was like an orphanage or some boys club, something in New York City. I'm like, all right, we're from the city area, but all right. That was the charity if you wanted to give money. It wasn't even connected to this. And you couldn't tell by the obituary what happened, nor would we tell you what happened. So it was rough all around.
Well, nowadays I've seen obituaries where people will acknowledge, I've seen them go good or bad. I still think a lot of people see suicide as the person is a bad person. I've told you, I spent 30 years thinking my dad was a bad person until I went through my training. Which, back to something you said a minute ago, when you were talking about time, weirdly enough, and I think I've said this before, when I did my training through NAMI, New Hampshire to speak about my dad's death, and until that training, which took place in 2022, my dad died in 92, 30 years.
Wow.
I thought my dad was a bad person, and I was more emotional than any other person on that training, and it had been a couple years for some of them because I had spent so much time with this feeling, forgetting who this person was, and just all I could focus on was how he died and what led to that, and the things that back then, that's what you thought, right? I guess.
Yeah, I've heard people say the last page in the book doesn't ruin the whole book, but it was the last page. You were focused on that last page, which is the end of life. But there was a bookload of data behind that it was his life. Well, you're right, man.
So will these young people be remembered because of, and one of them might have a little bit of a political piece to it. Will they be remembered for the wrong reasons, or will they be remembered for the people that they were? I think, like you said.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. People are more than, obviously it's a huge incident because it takes them off this planet. But man, I forgot that my dad he was a first responder. He was hilarious, but a little, and I say this in the most loving way, a little just like nuts. He was eccentric. He was a chef. He won awards for but he made things that we were like, get that crap out of, I ain't eating that. I'm a kid. He was gourmet. He was he was a hunter. He was just my friends. I was embarrassed by him, of course, because, you're a kid and your dad's weird and not like the normal dads, what was normal, I guess.
What is normal? Yeah.
My friends loved him. I didn't know this till later. All these guys that didn't really have dads active in their lives, my dad would take them fishing, and hunting, and also I think let them have a little sniff of something they probably shouldn't have been having, you know, a little bit of a beer or
the moonshine.
Yeah, a little something, and they thought he was the coolest dude ever. And I didn't know these things until people shared, even years later, about the impact that. But all I could think about was my dad had an addiction. My dad had some things that he did to my mother I didn't love, and I didn't know what actually a great person he was. And people told us bad things too right after he died, horrible things. His kids. So yeah, it was I know you remember I saw your brothers on when you did your talk a few weeks ago. You talked about who they were. We don't do that enough.
We don't do that enough, and it's a tough subject because you're going to make me cry thinking about it. But people sometimes after the fact, you heard some stories at the funeral. I remember people coming up to me telling me about my brother Mark, and they were telling stories about how they partied together. And one guy was very specific about the drugs they did together. I'm like, dude, I don't think I need to hear that right now.
See, look, y'all, if you can see me, I have tears in my eyes thinking about it. It's hard. It's tough. It's tough. No. And that's the thing. People don't know what to say. Sometimes just don't say anything.
Say nothing. Say nothing. Just be there. Just be there. Just be there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think part of these tears are coming from what, like you said, I watched the news this morning. I saw 2 young people whose life was cut short in such a tragic way, not suicide. I think about their families. You know, how many times have you heard of parents just couldn't deal with it anymore? They were just hurting so bad. You know, and they just, that led to their death, you know, either by almost heartbreak or by their own hand. And, you know.
Well, yeah, it could also foster some addictions there. They drink to ease the pain or whatever. Handling grief is so difficult properly. Is there a proper way? Obviously, you know.
You know, science tells you what, but humans are humans, right? Like it's real.
Ross tells you what stages you're in and all that good stuff. Great.
First day of social work class, I have to say. Just gonna put that out there if I remember anything. But I was thinking, is that real? Like, well, maybe, but you know, I don't. We can't be putting
anger, denial, all that other stuff.
Yeah. I still get angry. You know, I still get angry.
There is one guy wrote a book, and I saw him speak. He was really interesting. He wrote a book about the 6th stage of grief. You know, Kubler-Ross has the 5. He wrote the 6th, and the 6th was finding the purpose in the pain. That is doing something about it, which is sort of what we're doing right now, talking about our pain, which I couldn't have done this anytime but now. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, me neither.
So finding the purpose in the pain and trying to do something with it.
I think if I'd have done this before now, I would have done it from a place of anger still.
Ooh, you brought up a good point. I'm writing a book, and I have to get to a part of the divorce. I went through a divorce, and my first draft of the book about my life and losing 2 brothers, and also the divorce, the first draft was bitter. Oh my gosh. And if anyone does any journaling, you go back in your journals like, man, I was pissed off that day. The first draft is brutal. And I'm not in that place now. I don't know. I don't think I can put that chapter in there. So I may write 2 versions of this chapter. One would be, this is what I felt right after, and this is where I am right now. And right now I hit the freaking lottery. I found a girl walking down the street one day in Greenville, and we're married, and I couldn't have picked a better mate in my life. And because the light turned red, I made a left instead of going straight across the street. I made a left and ran into her. And you would have told me that when I was writing that journal article about my divorce. It is unbelievable. So it does get better, and I'm living proof of that. But holy mackerel, the first draft. If anyone journals, go back in your journals and that wasn't a good day. That was not a good day.
I mean, that's the human condition. I mean, every day is a good day.
Absolutely.
You know? I have great days, and then, you know, I don't know, my therapist reminded me that I'm not a therapist. I like to diagnose myself because my dad had bipolar disorder. It's severe, which is, you know, I knew what that was when I was 10 years old. And so I had this, you know, fulfilling prophecy that was going to be me just because I had mood swings. And she was like, "What? Where are you getting this from?" And so, you know, I was angry that I was him, and I was going to, you know, you kind of start to feel like, is this going to be me? And again, having a good therapist, she's kind of put me in my place in a way and was like, "No, you're a human being who's dealt with some grief, that post-trauma behaviors, and you're going to be okay." And so I quit like living this thought that something was wrong with me because of all this, because of my dad, you know?
Poor guy. Now you get to a point, this is for our listeners out there, if you're going through a grief right now, you get to a point where almost feel sorry for them in a sense. You give them grace.
Gosh.
Like we have no idea what they were going through on that final day.
Which is what I always think about with loss. Yeah. Where were they when you're that desperate?
In that moment in time. And I'm still coming back to, I'm going to coach you up here, and I got to coach myself. Sometimes when I talk to you, I'm talking to myself, really, because you woke up to the news, and there's a lot of news going on right now.
You're making me paranoid about this. Should I not?
No.
I will give it Dennis. It is crazy.
I'm talking to me, and they say, if you're a spiritual person, that's probably the best time to get into that and all that good stuff. I dive right into it with the news through the Reddit and read all this stuff, but I got to be on my guard. There's a lot of news out there, and we're trying to stay apolitical on this podcast because I'm of the belief both sides stink. We have two parties in America.
Hey, we agree on that.
They're both not in our best interest, but I did hear recently, and I thought this was going to happen, or I had a feeling. But a friend of mine had a friend who lost a federal job. We've had a lot of cuts, and they died by suicide. Now, was it the job? No. It's complicated. Yeah. It's a tough subject. Yes. It's often multiple things. Was he depressed before, after, during? Was it other stuff, financial? Was there a chemical imbalance, predisposition? There's a zillion stuff you can go through with what they call it the post-vention autopsy, whatever, psychological autopsy. But I don't feel good about 2025 and the numbers for suicide prevention. Well, is that a fair statement?
I mean, I think so. I think I'm also worried about numbers for violent deaths because people are angry and they're very divided. And, you have people that get on one side and there is nothing you're going to be able to do to change their mind and vice versa. That's why we say, hey, we're just here to chat. We're not going to take a political stance. It's just not our job. But man, I see people saying things and talking to people that I'm like, and I'm a person of faith, and I don't think I told you this, but also when I watch the news, I also do devotionals every morning. So maybe I
balance it out.
Maybe I counterbalance.
Balance it out.
Like, so I watch the news and then I immediately go do my devotion and pray for things that I see. Then I'm like, man, we need some help.
There you go. You redeemed yourself.
Yes,
right
I did.
Here in the podcast.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I was worried about you. I was going to send an intervention team. They would show up at your house when you wake up and cut the cable cord.
I also have mute. So if I don't want to hear about it, I just want to see something on a screen.
You mute it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got lonely in the mornings. My husband works from home, and he's like getting out of bed like 20 minutes before work, and I'm an early riser. I'm an early bird. And so it was quiet. My dogs were here with me, and I just wanted some noise in the background. That's how it started, to be honest.
That's fair. I live with someone like that. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Well, I the only message I have for folks and what you just said is, just the best thing to do to overcome stress and anxiety for me is just to try to just be kind. And a professor told me something one time. It stuck with me. Professors are professors, but he said, there's only one way to have a real educated opinion, and that's to understand both sides of the issue. And I am not speaking to a family member right now because I didn't have any real stance. I just asked a question. It's a family member I'm very close to, and man, it's painful. But I told them, I was like, I hear what you're saying, and I'm listening to you because I want to have both sides and understand. I'm not going to make a rash decision or have an opinion on anything if I don't understand all facets of it. I think that kind of lends itself to suicide loss too. People have opinions on that, but we need to hear how we feel as the folks that have lost, but also make room to understand where that person was. Just a thought.
You touched on something there, and we are a little tribal right now, and everyone stays in their tribe, and you can't talk somebody out of their tribe, so don't even try.
No.
Yeah, don't even try. Don't even go there. But I am saddened a little bit, and I've seen family members fighting on social media. It's unbelievable.
Oh, no.
And that was not the intent of social media.
Not doing that.
I got booted off Facebook. I think I shared this story. I don't have my two-factor authentication. Do you hear this pollen, by the way? Do you hear the allergies right now?
It's going away. Let's just keep it there. We're gonna believe. I have a little hatred for pollen. There's one thing I don't like.
Down south, my voice is raspy right now. It's unbelievable. It's crazy, the pollen right now. And where I live is number 9 on the top 10 worst places to live as far as pollen's concerned. I'm number 9. But I'm going to do something this weekend. I'm speaking to a group of men of faith, and this is where I'm going with all this. We're somewhat tribal, but I got a note from the organizer that attendance is low this year. And we're not getting together in groups, friendly groups, and we're divisive, and we're not we're not doing community things anymore, which bothers me a little bit. Communal, like, we should be able to have, and I am kind of living this a little bit. I have some weird political thoughts that doesn't agree with my friend group, but we all get along. It's okay to have a different opinion. Now it's not okay to have a different opinion. What's sacrificing is I think what we're sacrificing is our ability to get together in one room and have a beer and cheer, even though I'm sober, have a near beer and just cheer the other person and go, I don't agree with your opinion, but I'm glad you're here. That's lost right now. And we need to figure out a way to get that back.
Yeah, because it's dangerous. It's very dangerous to be that way. We have to, first of all, we live in a country, thank you, God, that you can have a different opinion and it's okay. You can share that. But what I don't like, and I got on Facebook this morning and somebody made a post, hateful posts, and I'm like, this is just, we got to stop this. And listen, it's everybody. It's not one or the other. I'm sorry.
I've done it.
It's I have to stop myself. But, also it's a lot easier to say it on a screen than say it to someone's face. That's why people don't want to get together, because it's hard to say something like that in front to someone instead of like what I call the keyboard warrior,
I think the great philosopher Mike Tyson said something about that. He said on
what
social media,
philosopher.
The great philosopher Mike Tyson, who once said, I can't see myself losing. With that lisp of his, he said something like, and it's a great statement, he said, social media allows you to say something that would get you punched in the face if you said it in person. And he's right. It's spot on. Also
in a car, I have to admit, you say things in a car you may not say to someone's face,
Yeah, you wouldn't say to their face. Hopefully, we get better at this, but I don't see I hate to end a podcast on such a sour note because I'm feeling, you hear my voice. I wake up tired, allergies. It's been a tough go of it as of late. I'm coming off the post-show, let down. I got to get busy again. I want to end on a hopeful note, and I'll give you some hope. This may be a good time for us to bond, if anything.
This weekend, talk to someone different than you.
Exactly.
And give them space and give yourself space and just be kind. Just one person.
There's someone out there that you owe a phone call, and if you could, listen to this podcast and bail us out on this podcast. Do one thing, take away one thing, call that person. Yeah. And I have friends of mine that never call me, and I get all pissed off. I always got to call you, but then I have a great time talking to them. So you know what? I just got to call them.
That's right.
That's it.
Yep, absolutely. It could be if everybody did that this weekend, was kind to one person, and that was different or thought different than them. Man. Think of the impact we could have.
Think of it. And we got our little halfasorrow.org, our little foundation, my foundation, that shared joy is a double joy, shared sorrow is half a sorrow. That's where we get our name. I would encourage the call to share a joy and share a sorrow, if you don't mind. And not everything is Skittles and unicorns, and we all know that.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Well, great talk today, Dennis. We didn't plan this, guys. We just, we just talked.
Well, I appreciate you waking up and doing both the news and your devotional. Like you watch the news and you
I have to know what to pray for, right? We got to be suspicious.
Dear God, please help us. Please help us in this world of uncertainty. And it is uncertain, but one thing is certain: change is inevitable. And I think behind me somewhere it says, on a bumper sticker, it says, enjoy the chaos. Enjoy the chaos. It's not going away. We got to figure out a way to enjoy it and plow through it. There's got to be a way. We got to figure out a way. And I think one of the ways we do it is listen to this podcast and know that you're not alone. And we're here for you. So if you need to get a hold of us, halfasorrow.org. Jessica, you're working for the state, correct?
No, I work for a nonprofit.
A nonprofit? Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew. Oh, good. So we're in the nonprofit space. So we got big hearts. So if you need us, come find. Not big wallets.
Big hearts, little wallets.
Little wallets, big hearts. And we appreciate you listening to this edition of It's a Tough Subject. And if you notice today, it was a tough subject for all of us because the news isn't good, but the outlook is good. We got to train ourselves to think that way. So good luck to all of you. I see our producer Tim has just popped on. That means we're coming at the end, Tim.
Yep.
Bringing it home. We're bringing it home. And Jessica, I'm Dennis Gillan. You're Jessica Seel. I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you. Have a good one, folks.
All right. Take care.